Well, this is a bit of a different backdrop, isn't it? Up on the gantry at Carrow Road, I've just recorded my first Canary call and some positive calls on BBC Norfolk tonight. A slightly different experience to what Chris Reeve had on opening day against Oxford United. A 4-3 victory for Norwich here this evening, and League Cup first round action against Stevenage, and some real moments of hope, I think. That feels like the overriding feeling for me here. It was far from perfect. We conceded 3 goals to League One opposition, but there were moments in there that got you dreaming, got you believing, and that's realistically all you want from a transition season, isn't it, at Norwich? I was speaking to fans before the game, and some were saying playoffs maybe on the horizon, some were saying, well, just survive and try and bed in some young players. And we saw that tonight. We saw the bedding in of young players. We saw Brad Hills, we saw Jaden Warner, we saw Abu Kamara, we saw Kellen Fisher. It was a much changed lineup, and I think that was the main frustration actually from Saturday's showing against Oxford, that actually it just felt very similar to last season. It felt very similar to the football we saw under David Wagner, and that was a huge issue. We still had Shane Duffy in there, we still had Grant Hanley in there, and not picking those out as individual kind of performances, but the system felt incredibly similar to last season, and that was the reason we changed. So people will get behind the transition season and transition period if transition is actually happening, and I think we felt that tonight. And it's been a fascinating few days at Norwich City. We've obviously had the news of Delia and Michael Wynne-Jones stepping aside and letting Norfolk Holdings Group, led by the Atenasio Group, come through, and that will be all change over the next couple of months. We've obviously seen the imminent sale of Adam Eder to Celtic for sizable cash. The Johnny Rose situation rumbles on. So there's been so much to dissect, and I think it can get quite easy to get overwhelmed with all of that and actually forget the important stuff, which is what we see on that pitch. It looks glorious, by the way. It's such a good view from up here. I feel so lucky, and thank you to all of the viewers who have been on this journey with me for the last decade on TNC. A real honour to host Canary Call this evening. I'm absolutely beaming, as you can probably see. But that was good tonight. And a goal for Kamara, a couple for Ronel Hernandez. He hadn't actually scored at Carrow Road since 2019, which I found hard to believe. A couple for him and an assist as well. He could have had a hat-trick if he didn't fluff his lines on the first one that fell to Kamara. I thought Borja Science was a lot more in the game tonight. And I think, of course, you have to take all of this with a slight pinch of salt. It was League One opposition, and they kind of took their foot off the gas when that fourth went in for Norwich City. But at 2-2 at half-time, it could have been nervy in that second half. And yes, they got a goal back late on through Brad Hills putting in his own net. But it felt comfortable, and there were passages of play in that felt really promising. And look, I'm not going to get ahead of myself, and I still think it's going to be a long, hard campaign for Norwich City, and particularly this next kind of 3 weeks. It's Blackburn on Saturday. I think they scored 6 this evening. They scored 4 at the weekend, I think. So they're flying at the moment, and that's going to be a far tougher test. But at least we saw glimpses tonight from young players that will be the future of this football club. We saw glimpses of a system coming to fruition. And that's kind of all you can ask for at this stage. We'll have far more clarity and far more vision on what this squad looks like post-transfer window closing. I suspect there'll be a few more outgoings. I suspect there'll be a few more incomings. A couple of those younger players tonight, Brad Hills, Abu Kamara, will be really hoping to find their feet in this first team. And suddenly, with all of that happening, you've got a starting 11 going into September with probably 7 or 8 changes from the opening day against Oxford. That was a really, really damaging first game for the Canaries against Oxford. But actually, it could well be a blessing. It could well be the kick that Johannes Hoff Thorup needed as head coach to go, okay, we need to switch this up. We can't be going into championship fixtures with Grant Hanley and Shane Duffy, and we need to make change. And I think that may well have happened. I think we saw that under Daniel Farker against Millwall, when it was kind of the end of the road for Russell Martin, and the road never really started for Marcel Franke, but the end of the road for him, and things got better from there. It wasn't instant, it wasn't overnight, but it felt as if that was a turning point. And I think we had that turning point really early on at the Kassam against Oxford on Saturday. I really like the look of Jaden Warner and Brad Hills, and look, they probably won't be starting championship games together, but there's definitely something there. I thought Brad Hills looked mightily composed. We saw glimpses of him in pre-season, and it felt optimistic, but it's pre-season, you can't really read too much into that. I thought despite the own goal this evening, he looked really good. We need to speak about Forson Amankwa, who, wow, looks the real deal, was involved in all of the good stuff this evening. I thought he looked a cut above the rest when he came on against Oxford, and if you keep that boy fit, we had a caller on Canary call this evening that said he's the next Gabriel Sauer, and although it's early to say that, you can see why people are starting to get excited. You just know with certain players, the way that they touch and the way that they move and their centre of gravity and the way that they can just be influential of play, and Forson Amankwa is exactly that. So that was great. Delighted for Ronel Hernandez, and I'm sure he will play his part this season, both on and off the pitch. And really, really impressed once again with Johannes Hoff Thorup and the way he's handling the media at the moment. This has been a really, really turbulent start for him. He's had so much stuff he's had to deal with that he wouldn't have wanted to deal with. And he's handled it with clarity, with maturity, concisely. The Johnny Rowe situation is the perfect example of that. He's met it face on. He's disciplined Johnny Rowe, and we will see what happens, whether he's sold or whether he's tried to be reintroduced back into the first 11 through the under-21s now. Johannes Hoff Thorup has said he's not accepting players in this first team that aren't motivated. He has a level of respect that the fans deserve, that the club deserves, that he deserves, that wasn't met by Johnny Rowe. He came to him on Saturday, said he wasn't motivated to play, and that was deemed unacceptable by Johannes Hoff Thorup. I think he's handled it superbly well. Look, this isn't the fix, and there is still a very long road to go here. But from Carrow Road this evening, there was a sense of hope and a sense of optimism, and that's all you ask for as a football fan. We all know that there's work to be done, and there is lots of change that will be happening in the next couple of weeks and in the next couple of years. This football club will probably look very different in a couple of years after the ownership of Atanasio and Co, and as Delia and Michael Wynne-Jones step away after a truly remarkable 27 years at this football club. But there's pockets of play this evening that just gets you dreaming again, and that's all you ask for. It's Norwich City 4, it's Stevenage 3 in the first round of the League Cup. It's got me excited, or at least hopeful, and I'm so thankful for all of you for this journey, because Canary Call was great fun this evening. Look at that view. Cheers everyone, bye bye.